Good evening. Tonight on Resource Wars, we will be looking at the Japanese conquest to reach the ultimate goal of world domination. Isn't that fun? You know? So anyway, let's start here. The Japanese prior to World War I was an isolationist nation. That meant that nobody really came by and they didn't really trade with anything. They were just themselves on an island in the Pacific. And then one day the Americans came in and they said, "Now you listen here and you listen good. We're going to trade you and exploit your resources that will go straight to us because you're just going to like it, alright? You're going to trade with us, you're going to love it, you're going to be like, America-kun, thank you for your trade." Yeah, that's what you're going to sound like. That's basically what the United States said to Japan. And so they started off trading, right? And in Japan, during World War I, when the world was at war with Germany, pretty much, they took a bunch of German islands that were over there and started setting up spheres of influence. Eventually, they were like, you know what? We need more resources, and where could we get these resources? So they decided to attack China, and they claimed the Korean Peninsula and set up their own sphere of influence. You're going to hear that a lot, sphere of influence. Why? Because it's important. So they take up all of Korea, set up their little thing there, right? And they're getting some resources. Korea has iron and stuff like that, all that nice, fun stuff that you need for ornaments. But they realized that after World War I, they thought of something. Some guy in a castle somewhere was like, you know what? We need to prepare for a total war so that we can complete our interests of, world domination, because we're fascists over here, and we think we're superior as a nation. And so they came up with this grand strategy, right? This grand strategy of setting up spheres of influence and starting to take resources and preparing for this total war scenario. And what total war is they realize that you need to have excellent production lines, you need to be able to mass produce these weapons and armaments, and you need the resources to mass produce these armaments in order to reach a victory. So, so they took that peninsula, the Korean peninsula, and they were like, alright, we need to do our own spheres of influence all over China. And they started doing that, right? Well, then Russia and America and the UK threw a little bit of a hissy fit. The Brits went, "Oi, mate, you can't do that. That's wrong. Yeah, that's wrong. You can't set up a sphere of influence." And the Russians were like, "Da, do свидания, ha ha ha. No, you cannot trade here." And then the Americans, well, they just, And anyway, so then, right? So then, they were like, okay, we'll chill out, we'll back off, we'll slow our roll. But while they were doing this, guess what? Guess what those Brits and those Americans and those Russians did? They set up their own spheres of influence in China because of a weakened China from the Sino-Chinese War, the first one. And so then they're like, you know what? Screw it. We're going to go to war with Russia. So then Japan went to war with Russia, and here's how that went. Oh, I'm the Japanese, baby. Yeah, I feel pretty good about this fight. See that Russian over there? I'm gonna mess him up. Yeah, as you can see, I'm clearly Japanese by my silks and my suedes, and the way I have national pride for my nation. Yeah, but you see that Russian over there? He pissed me off. Look at how dark my face got. He pissed me off. That's how mad I am, right? So check this out. Hey, come here, Russian. Duh. Hey. Yeah. 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 Boy, I haven't seen a beating that bad since Rocky IV. Anyway, so see, the Japanese, surprisingly, they won against the Russians, and now they were like, all right, we're going to claim this railway. So the Russians gave them a railway, and we'll just influence this area for a bit, right? So then eventually, they're like, oh, man, what can we do? Now, here's a fun little tactics for you young kids out there. If you ever want to start a war, make sure the other person does something first, you know? In a fight, for example, make sure the other person punches first. But in this case, have them blow up a train. Yeah, have them blow up a train, and then you can go to war with them. So that's what the Japanese did, right? So in an event that was, it might have been staged. I don't know, you know. They were like, they blew up our train on this railroad. We're just going to invade them. So that's what they did, right? Is they marched right into China, and they took over that northeastern part, and they set up a puppet state called Manchukuo. Now, Manchukuo has some resources, has iron. Iron leads to steel. What else? They probably have tungsten, chromium. Well, those are all good for tanks, yeah. So anyway, they have this nice little area now. So they claim that land, and they're like, all right. Now we might be able to pull this off. Except we gotta take this slow, baby. We gotta take this slow. But they didn't take it slow. Matter of fact, they ramped up their military quite fast. By the time Stalin made his 5-year plan, they also made a plan, and it made 50 more divisions for the Japanese military. So then they're like, okay. Alright, we're gonna set up troops on the border between Russia and China now. And let's see what happens, baby. And just like that tip of advice that I gave a little earlier, make it look like they swung first. So, there was this thing called the Marco Polo Bridge incident. And this was basically a border conflict between a bridge, because they didn't know what they were doing. And so the Chinese shot first. And so this led to military ramping up, and Japan is just like, my goodness. And they like rip off their shirts and stuff, you know, right? They're mad about this bridge incident. So then they're like, alright, you know what? We're going to invade your ass. So that's what they did. They started a war with China called the Second Sino-Chinese-Japanese War. And so they're fighting. And during this time, this is when, you know, that man with the mustache and that bald guy in Italy, what was his name? Benito Mussolini and Hitler, this is when they're all up high and mighty, and pretty sure Hitler just conquered Poland at this time, and was possibly about to take over France. So what the Japanese did is they're like, alright, this China war, going great. And it was going good. They were completely wiping out the Chinese. They go to Beijing, They take that, they keep going. They just keep going, man. They keep pushing. And eventually they're like, alright, let's look around real quick. So, we have a pretty alright fleet. We have a pretty good fleet. Let's see, let's look at these islands around us. And there's a lot of islands. You have the Philippines down south, that's full of rubber and steel and even more beautiful resources. And then they're also like, what else? There's the Dutch East Indies, so that's like Indonesia, Java, those islands and stuff. And then eventually they're like, and then all the way down there is Australia. Alright. That has some good resources too. You know what? Let's go for it. Let's go for it all. So they did a thing. They did a thing called island hopping. Let's take a look at what this may have looked like. Or Rodney might check it out. Got me a new pair of clothing, yeah? Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? Yeah, what's that patch for on the side? Oh, it's Jurassic Park. Yeah, does it come out for another 40 years? Yeah. Yeah, you got one too, yeah? Yeah, alright. Oof. Alright. Sure do love being able to relax on one of these islands. It's pretty nice.
Yeah,
right here in the middle of the Pacific.
Look at that.
Nothing can go wrong. Just listen and enjoy the breeze of the beach. Oh shit! I mean, blimey! Get the guns! Get the guns right! There's too many of them! I need more shells, yeah? There's too many of them. My goodness. It pays the Japanese are attacking us, yeah? Them druggers, yeah, they don't know it's coming. Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh jeez. I'm gonna have to fight them. Alright, you Japanese crocodile, come at me, mate. Come at me, I'll hit you with the the ringery-doo, yeah, I'll hit you up with it, yeah. Come on at me, yeah, come on. Oh, what's that? Why you got a sword, mate? Crikey! Arigato! Oh, damn. Damn, that That was crazy, huh? My goodness, that war thing was just nuts, wasn't it? My goodness. Here, let me put you back on here. Let's get you back on track. Let's see. How does this work? It goes like, oh, there we go. Oh, hold on, I'll get it, guys. Yeah, it goes this way. Almost there, guys. Almost got it. Alright, there we go. So as you can see, this whole island hopping thing, that was brutal. That was brutal, right? So that just shows how much they wanted these resources, right? So eventually they eyed down and they're like, man, we want the Philippines. Philippines are a puppet of the U.S., so we're gonna have to go to war with the U.S. So then they're like, alright, dope. So they make a huge plan, right? And this is where the iconic Day of Infinity comes in, right? Where they swoop in, and they bomb the hell out of Pearl Harbor, which is horrible for our American pride, of course. And real quick, oh, you still look a little shaking here. Hold on, buddy. Ah, there we go. Ha! Look a little better now. You got your head up high. So anyway, so like, alright, we're gonna hopefully with this attack on Pearl Harbor, it's gonna give us enough time to take the Philippines, wipe out their navy for a while, and we'll be able to do a little better with our resources, right? So then they're like, okay, let's do it. So then they do the Pearl Harbor thing, and then they take the Philippines. General Douglas MacArthur was there on the Philippines, and he ran away. But that's alright, though. He needed to live because he was going to come back and be a badass, in which he did. So anyway, the Japanese, they take the Philippines, and they start heading for Malaysia, and they start taking that for the resources. And they want to take Singapore for the resources, baby. We're talking rubber, iron, chromium, tungsten, whatever the hell you can think of. There's jungles down there, and there's a lot of wood. You know what? They put wood on their torpedoes? You know they put wood on their torpedoes to make them float better? Yeah. Anyway. So they're doing all this stuff, right? While all this other stuff in Europe is happening. So we take them out, the people in Europe first. They're like, alright, this gave us a way for the U.S. to join the war because they attacked Pearl Harbor. That was stupid, right? So now it's Americans' turn to rip off their shirts and wave their flag. And then they're like a wrestler. Those Japanese, they bombed our ports and they killed some of our young men, and this I will not be having any part of. No sir, no sirree. So yeah, so the U.S., we're an arsenal of democracy over here, and we start ramping up our military production, and since we're a lot better at production, we outproduce like every nation during this war, maybe except Russia, but we don't know. And so we go to war with them, and the Japanese, they have their huge fear in the Pacific. They're winning this Chinese war still, but now that the Chinese has more support from the Allies and stuff like that. At this time, the Soviets and Japan had a non-aggression pact, so the Soviets weren't going to help. Anyway, so then the war's going on, right, and eventually the rest of the Axis lost. They got invaded. That guy with the silly mustache, he put a bullet in his skull in his bunker, and that Italian guy, he was banished pretty much. Those people didn't like him anymore. And it was just Japan, all alone with their sphere of influence, their claiming of these natural resources. And then eventually, through a series of island hoppings, like the one we saw earlier, except this time, instead of the Japanese invading the Australians, I think I'm going to do Australians, it's the U.S. invading the Japanese. Now, the Japanese believed in this Shindo code, right? Is that there is nothing dishonorable than to lose and surrender to an enemy. So they would fight till the end. So these island hopping campaigns were a lot more brutal. We're not going to show that. That's just a lot of work, and that's a lot of blood, and I don't think that'll be school appropriate. So we're just going to talk about it. So yeah, they took Iwo Jima, what's another one? Yeah, Iwo Jima, I think it was, what's the other one called? It's a lot of islands, alright, and they have a lot of names, Iwo Jima is just an easy one to remember. So eventually, right, they take Japan out of China, they lose that front, they're losing the island war. Finally, Japan is once again alone with a bunch of pissed off people around them. So they're like, alright, we're never going to surrender. You can try your best. And stuff. But it's going to take a lot. And so the U.S. was just like, well, we got these scientist guys over here. And they've been producing the most destructive weapon known to mankind, capable of erasing families in a blink of an eye. We made 2 of these bombs. We're going to test them. So that's what they did. Is that they dropped 2 bombs on Japan, causing millions of death. Families torn apart. People burned. In Japan there's a step, and there's a shadow. You can see a person's shadow of when the nuclear bomb came through, and it just left his figure there. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, that was basically the solution to the conflict, is that the war was over. The United States have won. Japan was no longer thirsty for resources. They were now more tame, saying, and I quote, "The war seems to no longer be in our favor. We have surrendered." So yeah, that's pretty cool. And yeah, that was the war for resources. Have a good night.